aimed at SME businesses and micro businesses to help you protect yourselves now, in the future, and especially with everybody working from home at the moment. So please do look out for a post-event email with more details on that. As I say, they are launching it this week, so we can't actually share anything today because it's coming out in the next few days. Without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Bev McGowan, who's going to be your chair for today, and has really kindly helped us put this event together. Thank you so much. Over to you, Bev.
Thank you, Rose. Good morning, everyone. So I'm Bev McGowan, and I'm the founder and CEO of Cyber Pro Academy, and also Business Risk Specialists, which is a data protection and cybersecurity consultancy and managed services business. Over the last 24 years, I've been working with businesses, helping them to uplift their capability in these areas and reduce their risks. So work for a number of organisations, small and large, so Citibank, Co-op Bank, Royal London Group and Lloyds Bank. I'm sure you'll recognise those names. So I'll be chairing the event for you this morning, and we've hope you take away some valuable insights from all the speakers. We've got some great speakers lined up for you. What we're going to do is we're going to take questions at the end. So if you wouldn't mind, throughout the presentations, if you could just put a question in the chat box, and Helena, Rose or Siobhan will be collating those, and we'll run through those at the end, if that's okay with everybody. If you can just do a prefix with a Q, it just helps us to sort as well throughout the chat. That'd be really helpful, thank you. Next slide, please. Next one. Okay, so cybersecurity, it's one of the top concerns, isn't it, of business owners and chief execs, and rightly so. You know, we hear about these cyber attacks and data breaches every day in the news, and even those organisations who we think are, you know, 100% bulletproof, you know, they also get attacked, and things do get through. So, you know, sadly, cyber criminals, they've taken the opportunity to exploit our vulnerabilities throughout this pandemic. So all the disruption that we went through, and the vulnerabilities that we had at that time with our processes and our technology, getting things up to speed. So we've seen a sharp rise in those, you know, phishing attacks and account takeovers and things like that. And some of these impacts on our business can be severe and catastrophic in some cases. You know, small businesses, within 2 years of having a cyber attack, many of them do actually fail, sadly. So it's really important that we put in place the right safeguards, risk management, and those types of things, which we'll be covering today throughout the presentations. So various impacts, some businesses will experience some of these, or all of them. So anything from, you know, loss of systems and services, loss of data and corrupt data, the contractual issues where we're not able to meet our service levels with our customers and with our clients, and, you know, in some cases, actual business failure. Okay, next slide, please. So I think we're all of the realisation now that, you know, it's a case of when and not if, but all is not lost. So there are things that we can do, and we can plan for the inevitable happening, and that can reduce our risk. It can reduce the likelihood of something happening, but it can reduce that impact, which is really important. Make us more resilient, and give us that ability to recover when that happens. So there's five key areas really which we need to be addressing within our businesses. So the first one's identify. Okay, so we can only protect and manage what we know about. So this first stage really is all about, you know, what are my most important assets? What are the critical assets to the business that are supporting the business objectives, supporting the business processes? Okay, and that can be, you know, data, it can be devices. In some cases, it can actually be people. Okay, so that's one of the very first steps, so that we understand what we're actually dealing with and what the scope of, you know, whatever framework it is that we're looking to put in place, what that covers. And then the next thing we need to do within identify stages is looking at what are the threats which are most relevant to me. You know, who are the threat actors that I'm most concerned about, and what are the vulnerabilities within my business? Because, you know, the risks will be different depending on what business you are, how mature you are, what industry you're in, and what type of data and services you're processing and providing. So those are two of the first things we need to do, and then from that, then we'll identify what our risks are and assess the level of impact and the types of impact to our business. You know, those will differ. If we look at, say, the unavailability of data, medical data in a hospital, that's going to be severe in comparison to us losing data of customers, say, in a builder's merchants. So, you know, it's not equal for all businesses, and that's why we need to go through that identification process, evaluation, and do our risk management properly. So the next stage is protect. Okay, so that's looking at then what are the safeguards which we need to put in place to protect those important information assets in our business. And there are many frameworks out there, some of which will be covered today by our speakers, from Cyber Essentials, ISO 27001, and there's many others. But we need to look at, you know, preventative controls which we can put in place, and also some detective controls as well, and corrective measures for when things actually happen. Okay. Detect. So we need to put in place processes, activities where we can actually detect where that suspicious behaviour is going on. So, you know, you might do this internally, or you might look for an external company to do this. We offer this as a managed services to some of our clients. You know, there are various tools that we can use to identify that behaviour, and that then enables us to then respond. And we need to have those processes and those plans in place to respond to incidents. And I know that Paul later on is going to be covering that, a case study from his business. Continuity plans, really important, disaster recovery plans, so that we can make sure that we recover as quickly and effectively as possible. Okay, next slide, please. So there's many different things that we can do, but the important thing is we need to be addressing people, process and technology, okay? Obvious, we need technical controls in place, but our people are one of our strongest defences, okay? And we all need to be working together. And, you know, groups like this, where we're sharing intelligence, we're sharing information, and we're being open and transparent about things. And, you know, it applies to our clients and our customers, third party to suppliers, law enforcement, and also our cyber resilience centres as well. We've got Rebecca here from the North East CRC with us today. So she'll be telling us, you know, what the CRC can do also to help these small to medium-sized businesses in our region. Okay, so various things we can do, processes as well. And again, if we look to certain frameworks, it helps us to plug any gaps that we've got, make sure that we've got everything covered and we're actually addressing our risks. Okay. Next slide, please. Thank you. So creating a positive security culture, really important, okay? This can make a massive difference to our business. And these are some of the things that we need to do in order to achieve that. So really important that we set policies out so people understand what our expectations are within the business, okay? And that they're communicated as well. So that management direction is set out in policy, it's communicated, and it's communicated in a number of different channels, and repeated as well. So it's not just a, you know, annual online learning that somebody does for half an hour, okay? We can do that, but we need to have other things besides that as well, making sure that those policies are really easily accessible for people. The communication and the engagement is really important. So if we bring people along in the journey with us, we get their buy-in easier, and also they understand then what is it that we're trying to achieve, and what are the risks and what are the impacts, and how it affects them as well. Because when something does go wrong, it affects everybody, doesn't it? And particularly the morale within an organisation as well. So that communication and that engagement is really key. Training and awareness. You might do certain specialised training and awareness for different functions within your organisation, but you really need to have a strategy and a solid plan in place for that. What you're going to be delivering and when, and by what means. Okay. Incident reporting. So really important, people know who to contact if something goes wrong, and actually that there's a no blame culture, so people aren't scared of reporting something when there's an incident, because you want to be able to contain something as quickly as possible. So, anything that happens, these need to be reported almost immediately. And of course, we've got the GDPR, Data Protection Act requirements as well to meet. So again, really important that we hear about these incidents as soon as possible to contain that risk. Roles and responsibilities. So making sure everybody's very clear, what are their objectives relating to security? What do they need to do personally in their role? And who do people need to go and speak to? And then a whistleblowing policy as well. So making it easy for people to actually, inform when something's going on, which they feel is, not compliant or illegal or, against company policy. If they don't feel comfortable going to somebody, that they've got a process for doing that. Okay. Next slide, please. So as I've said, there are various frameworks we can use, and it really is down to, what you feel is suitable for your business. Cyber Essentials, I would say, is one of the first steps, and Emma's going to cover that shortly with you. But there are other frameworks out there. We've got the NIST framework, we've got ISO 27001. They've all got similar principles and similar controls, but it's really useful for, taking a methodical approach and just making sure that you haven't got any gaps. Okay, make sure that you understand all of your risks, which is all part of the process. Okay, I'm not going to go through all of these controls individually. At the end of the presentations, I believe we're going to be sending out these slides to everybody. Okay, so if we're looking at implementing a framework within our business, there's a number of steps we need to go through. So we first need to understand, what is it we're dealing with? So what are our security objectives? What are we trying to achieve? Are there regulations we need to comply with? Stakeholder requirements? Have we got things written in our contracts? So really understanding the context and what the bigger picture is. Okay, and then that will help us to then scope out the piece of work and prioritise what we need to do. Okay, then making sure that we baseline. So we create a baseline. So we're looking at, where are we now? So do a baseline assessment against whichever standard it is. And then after you've done your risk assessment, which is the next step, then we can create a target position. And then from that, we'll know what our gaps are. We can prioritise those, and we can create an achievable action plan. We can't do everything at once, so we need to understand, what the risks are, what the gaps are, and take a risk-based approach then to implementing that in our organisation. Okay. Now, if you want any further information on this, or any of the frameworks or controls, then feel free to get in contact after this session. Bev at CyberPro is one of the best contact emails for me. Okay, thanks very much. So I'll now hand over to Rebecca Chapman from the North East Cyber Resilience Centre. Thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I'll try not to put you to sleep too much throughout this. Some of it is a little bit of a duplication of what Bev said, but it comes at it really from a small and medium enterprise angle rather than a slightly larger company. So my name's Rebecca Chapman. I'm the current director of the Cyber Resilience Centre for the North East. I'm also a serving superintendent. I've got 27.5 years service and I work for South Yorkshire Police. I'm just currently seconded onto a team that looks at collaboration across the region. So I work all the way from Northumbria all the way down to Hull. And I'm stepped in really for my colleague Neil, who is the director at the GMP Centre at the moment and works with Bev on a regular basis. So next slide, please. Okay, so the topics that I've got for discussion today, I've called them the 5 Ps basically. So we need to look at your people, so your staff, your management and your board. What are they all doing to contribute towards cybersecurity? What processes do you have in place? And I know Bev's referred to some of those in her presentation. What about your partners? How about your supply chain? Do they use the NCSC guidance? Have they got Cyber Essentials and Cyber Essentials Plus? Are they safe? Also performance, so we monitor risk. How do we do that? And pounds, so we can afford, we can provide you with affordable services through membership of the North East Business Resilience Centre, and I'll come on to that in a little while. And then the topics for discussion is why do SMEs not take up cybersecurity advice? And we've done some research as a centre. One of my DIs is doing a master's and he's done some research on that. So I'll present that a little bit later. So next slide, please. So just some current information for you. So earlier this year, a survey by the Department for DCMS found around half of micro and small businesses reported falling victim to a cybersecurity breach or a cyber attack in the last year. That is incredibly high. The average cost of these businesses was nearly £1,000, rising to £3,000 for some. Now, in these, times when, we're struggling to keep the doors open, for people to go work from home and then have that happen to them is quite catastrophic. A recent study found that 65% of organisations in the UK have either been breached or exposed to an attack, and only 42% said they were well prepared for moving to remote working, compared to 45% who were a little bit prepared and 13% who were not prepared at all. So that leaves more than half of all firms at least moderately under threat at the point when we went into lockdown and everybody had to work from home. Next slide, please. So different types of cyber attack, what are they? So you've got malware. So that is, spyware that's put into your system, worms that spread via the software, a virus where your system can be infected, or ransomware, which tends to be quite popular at the moment, where demands are made for Bitcoin. I would say that in any kind of cyber attack, if the attack is happening now, then I would be tempted to contact the police because they can help you retain your data. Obviously, there's companies out there like Bev's company that are well versed in incident response, and they can also help. But if we don't know the picture of what's happening out there, we can't provide the protect advice for other firms that are undergoing similar attacks. So how does it get in? So you can use a little USB, goes inside your computer. We found that some of those have been dropped in car parks. Somebody's picked it up, thought, oh, that's quite handy, I'll use that. Pops it into the machine and in gets the malware. Phishing and spam is 80% of all attacks. So we talk about your staff and what you can do about your staff. They're kind of your personnel firewall, if you like. So if they know not to click on phishing and spam, then that might stop most of your attacks. People do have a lack of firewalls. That's just software. And they don't do the patching. So you might say this irritating thing that comes off on your computer saying, you must update me, please restart your computer, please update me. And you ignore it night after night. And unfortunately, that is allowing you to be vulnerable to attack. So always do your updates. And then you've got adware. So pop-up adverts, click on those to take you somewhere that you don't want to go. And also scams. So recently, one of our business owners in the North East region who owns a plant hire company, who shall remain nameless. He sent an invoice, or his clerk sent an invoice to a well-known customer that had been a customer of theirs for 20 odd years. They paid it. He then went to chase the bill, thinking, I haven't got that money. It was £30,000. And the company came back to him and said, no, we've paid it. We've definitely paid it. We've paid it to this account. And it transpires that somebody had hacked into his emails. They had basically committed a mandate fraud, and he lost the 30,000, but came to an arrangement with his customer that they stumped up £15,000 each. So it's not great for customer relations, and it wasn't great for the company. So what does it result in? And I think Bev did mention this earlier, financial loss. So not only the company losing money through revenue and sales, but also through the fines that may go with GDPR if you didn't take care of your data. Reputational loss, so which is why a lot of firms want to remain anonymous when we go to help them, and that's absolutely fine. Data loss, so your customer lists, so somebody else gets hold of that. Also technical information, which equals commercial intelligence, as we all know. So next slide, please. Okay, so I mentioned people earlier. So these are the things that people can do. And I'm sorry if this is really basic, but sometimes you get a bit of a mixed audience. So passwords, what the NCSC recommend is 3 random words. So, and the space bar is your friend. So if you can come up with 3 random words that are not related at all, and then use a system like Password Locker to put them in. So quite often you'll find that in an organisation, staff will have one password that covers all the systems that they have access to. So if one system gets hacked, they all get hacked. Physical security, so leaving laptops open, and this is a police trick, is you leave your laptop open, or you used to leave your pocket notebook lying around, somebody come and draw in it, so that when the sergeant looked at it, you get into trouble later. So this is the modern day equivalent, is leaving your laptop open, so emails can be sent from your address when you're not looking, but also it means that your USB ports are not locked down and information is accessible. Phishing, I think we've already mentioned this. Do your staff know what it is? Do they know not to click on the links? Absolutely key. 86% we heard of all attacks are phishing. And then mandate fraud. Always have a double checking mechanism in place. So the first bit of advice that we gave to the company, the plant hire company that I just spoke about, was when your clerk goes to make a big transfer, can she just check it with whoever's around and just have a double check-in or sign-off procedure before it gets sent. And basically all of this is digital hygiene. Next slide, please. Okay, so your processes, and Bev again mentioned some of these earlier. So quite often you find that a company will meet and it doesn't have a standing board agenda item related to cyber risk or data recovery. This is quite clearly about having plans in place and talking about them regularly and exercising them regularly. You can get insurance for a cyber attack. In fact, if you take out CE and CE+, there is a level of insurance that gives you basic cover. And CE and CE+, which is your cyber essentials, and the small business guide will help you follow what's required. It will help you to learn to back up your data, protect you from malware, keep your phone safe and your passwords safe, and it will dish out phishing training. And some of this is, I'll come on to the NABRC later, all of this is on our website. Your mandate fraud is your double checking system, that's the process, and staff training program for new starters with incremental digital hygiene. And it would be wise to have policies on security, having to change your password every so often, not being allowed to use USBs that haven't been cleared by your IT department or your IT bod, phishing emails, and GDPR. Next slide, please. So this is really crucial, and this is some of the reason why we have such big businesses invested in the North East Business Resilience Centre. It's because they want us to train their supply chain and they want them to be safe. And I think a lot of companies will not know when they're connecting with suppliers, do you know that they're safe? Do you require them to have CE or CE+ before you contract with them? Do you expect them to have high standards of security or digital hygiene? Do you ask those questions before you contract? And what due diligence can you apply before contracting? What's reasonable to go and have a look at? Have a look at their online footprint. see what other people they're contracted with, look at the qualifications that they hold and the certifications that they hold. And you can use the NEBRC and NCSC to help with that. There are things on both of our websites that will help you to see what you're looking for in terms of qualification when you go to search out your supply chain. And at the moment, I don't believe you can get a public service contract unless you've got CE and CE+. So, for example, we've got the Commonwealth Games coming up, and we're going to go and deliver some training to try and get a lot of the food and drink suppliers CE and CE+ prior to being able to bid for those contracts. And I put at the bottom, use any trusted companies to undertake your cyber security. So some of those that I would mention would be obviously ourselves. We've got a list of trusted partners. Bev is on the CyberX group for the GMP, so he's linked to that. So anybody that's linked to any of our centres is safe because we've done the due diligence on them. IASME, obviously, if they are CE and CE+, the CREST approved or IS 27001, or the long-standing trusted organisations like Bev's company that have been doing this for a long time. Next slide, please. And finally, pounds and finances. So yes, you will have to outlay a tiny bit of money to do this. It's very affordable when you get it from the NEBRC. We can point out risk areas, we could do tabletop exercising. You know that cyber insurance is available. The patching comes for free, usually with your software updates. Antivirus software will be a small outlay, as will the staff training. But we have numerous resources on the website that you can take and deliver yourself. They're very simple to deliver. And then you're looking at outsourced services. A lot of companies will outsource their services to an IT company. Do not assume that they are cyber security companies also. Check that out. But the benefits are that you reduce the risk of cyber attack, the loss of data, business and reputation, which all equals financial loss, and increases customer confidence in your business if you can prove to them that you are cyber security safe. The next slide, please. So I mentioned earlier that we did some research with SMEs and we delved into why they didn't access cybersecurity advice, or they didn't seem to, because the NCSC has been putting this advice out for a really long time now, but it still seems that the attacks were happening. So when we asked them, one of them was obviously the plant hire company, and he just said, why would anybody want to hack me? I'm a plant hire company. He just doesn't understand why anybody would want to hack him until it happened. So actually when it happens and communities start to talk to each other and they realise that it could happen to them, that is a pointer for them to start and do something about it. But a lot of them don't think that they're big enough to be attractive to a hacker. Well, we know that that's incorrect now, because we know that a lot of small and medium enterprises are the ones that have been attacked. I mean, don't get me wrong, Spotify got hacked last week. Chess.com got hacked this week. So there are still big companies out there getting hacked, which are, you know, the target of foreign actors. But the small and medium enterprises, this is the program that my senior ethical hacker tells me that he can write a program, go to the pub, and when he comes back, he's hacked a number of companies, and it just does a troll. And I think while lockdown's been on, they've reverted back to just doing a troll because they know lots of people will be vulnerable. People think that cybersecurity advice is expensive. It doesn't have to be. The Small Business Guide is out there. The 10 steps to cybersecurity are out there. They are not hard to implement, and they give you a great deal of protection. Next slide, please. Okay, so I was asked here today to talk to you about the NEBRC. It's one of a network of BRCs and CRCs throughout the region, throughout the UK. So the GMP is partnered with the Digital Centre at Manchester, and they are a cyber resilience centre. We are a business resilience centre, so we also will move into other areas like fraud, retail and tourism and rural crime and so on over the next year. But basically what it is it's a really unique nexus. There's nothing that exists like it, and it's law enforcement, so the police, along with the MPCC and the NCA, academia and big business, and it's a partnership to provide, protect and prepare advice to small and medium enterprises. It's a not-for-profit private company. It's run by a board of directors, and I'm the current CEO at the moment. So what does it do? So we provide business alerts to our members through a newsletter. So I get a weekly threat report that comes in from the NCSC. We interpret that and we push it out in terms of messages to our members through the newsletter. We offer student commercial services. So this does a number of things. So there's 8 services that we offer, which go all the way from an online footprint, staff training, all the way through to vulnerability testing. And these are students from Sheffield and Hallam University. They are specifically chosen out from all their colleagues for the skills that they have and their communication skills. And what it does is it gives them work, absolutely crucial work experience in front of companies, but heavily supervised by a senior ethical hacker who has been off and worked for a government department and then come back. So it gives them an opportunity to go into a business, showcase their talent. So afterwards, we're feeding the talent pipeline with some of the companies that they're going into. We run events. We were running actual face-to-face events, but obviously we've turned into webinar kings and queens since we went into lockdown. So we do those locally and regionally. We share intelligence with other police forces, other centres, and our business community, with a link to the NCSC advice. So they push it out and then they ask us for feedback about, what we think about the advice that's come out. Is it understandable? Can we think of a way of tweaking it? And we also match up our promotion calendar to theirs and IASME's. We're very lucky to be partnered with IASME and the NCSC. We have an MOU with the NCSC, which I don't think anybody else has. They're very loath to give it away to anybody else, and we're very lucky to be partnered with IASME. Emma Philpott quite often comes along to my board to update us on national updates. And we also have links to the other CRCs throughout the country. So we now have one, we've got one in GMP, obviously, that Bev's part of. There's one in the North East, there's one in the South East, South West, the Eastern region, and Wales, and London is due to come on board. And obviously we're all mirroring what the Scottish Centre did. It was a bit groundbreaking in its time. It's been going for about 9 years up there. And we use our trusted partner network to refer our people to. So once the students have been in, done as much as they can do, we then refer them on. And what we found recently, we've got a contract with the Leeds City region, with the local enterprise partnership. And we've been offering advice to micro businesses. So we've been onboarding them at tiered paid membership for the contract. And the people that have been coming to us genuinely have absolutely no clue about cyber. So, and that might be some of you that are sat there today thinking, genuinely, I have no clue what you're talking about. I don't know what a network is. I don't know what patching is. What's a vulnerability assessment? That's fine. That's what we're here for. We can interpret, demystify, and point you in the right direction. Next slide, please. So this is our national network, as I just went through. You can see most of them are cyber resilience centres. Obviously, we are the only business resilience centre in the North East, but all the contact details are on there. So wherever you are in the region, in the country, there will be somebody for you. And these slides can come out afterwards. I'm quite happy for them to be circulated. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is the North East Business Resilience Centre. There's myself, not a terribly flattering picture, I'm a bit miserable that day. And then I have 2 detective inspectors. You'll see Steve on the left with less hair. He's the head of cyber and innovation and business development now, and he runs the Yorkshire and Humber side of the business. And then I've got Martin Wilson with slightly more hair because he's slightly younger. And he's the head of cyber innovation and student services, and he works in the North East hub, so up in Durham, Cleveland and Northumbria. We've then got the wonderful Lizzie Buckler, who is our client relations and admin manager. And then we employ a company called MK Public Relations to do our PR for us. And our senior ethical hacker we take from a company called Business Resilience International Management, who are helping set up all the CRCs across the UK. And Abdullah comes and does senior ethical hacking for us, so he oversees what the students are actually doing when they go into the companies. Next slide, please. So as you can see, and I'm not going to go through all of those, they're some of the companies that are on our board. The chair of our board is Brian Dilley, who is the head of money laundering and fraud prevention at Lloyd's for the group. So we have some very high up people, if you like, on our board, which is really great because they can give you a fantastic strategic direction. Next slide, please. And on my advisory group, these are more local firms. So we've got, you know, online banks, we've got security firms, and we've got Sheffield Hallam University and Northumbria University. So they advise me on what's going on in the region, what they're trying to do within the clusters, which you'll probably have in your region as well. And they kind of influence what messages we put out there. Next slide, please. And these are our trusted partners. So these are who we call our trusted partners, and they are IASME approved certifying bodies. So once the students have done what they've done, we pass them on. And what we're finding is there is a market that hasn't yet been found, that we've found with the Leeds partnership work. So these are companies that you know, have never shown an interest in cyber whatsoever, so wouldn't have been part of the database of the trusted partners at all. And we're now, if they hang around long enough, we're now going to be able to pass them on to them. So we've kind of discovered this new like under market, which will be commercially viable for the trusted partners in you know, in time. Next slide, please. Okay, so our services, I mentioned that we offer some services from the students. They're some of the services we offer. I won't go through them all. But you can see they range from something that you can do from remote and far away to something that they could come in and do in quite detailed in your company. Next slide, please. So the Northumbria Sheffield University, they provide the students. I remember a guy from KPMG saying to me that he would wait at my school gates and take them all when they came out the other end. And when you see the work that they produce, they are incredibly talented and up to date. And these are people that kind of live and breathe ethical hacking. So they go to ethical hacking societies and they love what they do, and they do it in their spare time. Next slide, please. So these would be, I would say, the next steps for you. If you're at the start of that journey into cybersecurity, go for your low-hanging fruit first. So make sure you do your patching, your updates, have a vulnerability assessment, perhaps by the centre and the students, and look at your staff hygiene. So look at your staff training and your basic hygiene packages, and that will help staff at home as well as it will help them at work. Do some due diligence on your supply chain, find out where they're coming from and who they are. Ensure that your staff and your processes reflect your risk in your company. What do you think your risks are? And make sure that your processes reflect that. Consider external checks and verify your cybersecurity company when you're choosing them. Make sure they've got qualifications, make sure they've been in the business, read the reviews. And join the NEBRC. Obviously, the free core membership is a bit of a no-brainer. You can join via our website, you can receive a newsletter that comes out every 2 weeks, and you have access to all the resources on it. Obviously, our membership goes up in tiers, so it goes up to 500, 1,500 and 3,000, depending on the size of your company. And for that, you get added extras. So you might get a closed session and staff training, you might get 10% off a student service, or you might go for 2 of those if you're in that middle tier. So you can sign up for regular threat reports at the website, and we do things like exercise in a box or Lego. So if you want to take your management team through a simulated attack and look at the consequences of what your decisions are during that attack, then you can do these exercises, and we've done them as a team. And obviously you would hope that we scored quite highly, we did. So we're fully trained to be able to take you through that. But the main thing is that the Small Business Guide is out there already from the NCSC. If you just follow the advice there, if you have trouble interpreting it or you want it demystifying, we can help with that. And then consider getting yourself CE and CE+, making yourself business ready for those bigger contracts. Next slide, please. So just this week with our national partner, Red Store, we have 2 of them, Red Store and Ace. So We do surveys with some of the clients. It's really anonymous, it's really quick to complete, and we'd really appreciate if any company out there would complete it. And it's just really to reveal the true risk of cybercrime and data loss in 2021. It's completely anonymous, and I'd really appreciate it if you would help us fill that in. Next slide, please. So, thank you for listening. I hope I haven't sent you all to sleep. I would normally say, do you have any questions? But I know that I'm hanging around for a Q&A session at about 10 to 12. So thank you very much for listening.
Thanks, Rebecca. That's great. Some really useful advice. And I'd encourage anybody to go onto your local CRC or BRC website and join that membership. Okay. So, next we've got Mick Mitchell. So Mick's Senior Security Consultant at my company, Business Risk Specialists. So we'll hand over to Mick. Thanks, Mick.
Hi, thanks very much, Bev. So I'll just tell you a little bit about myself before we go on. So I've came at things a little bit different from most cyber consultants. So my name is Mick Mitchell, and I've spent about 35 years in the IT industry as a senior IT director for a number of banks and companies, including IT Security and Operations Director at the Co-op Bank, IT Shared Services Director at the Co-op Group, IT Security and Services Director at the Post Office. So I've looked after these roles, and over the last 10 years, when I've had to go to board meetings, which is normally each month, I don't talk about IT services. I talk about IT security and business security and cyber security. So my life changed a little bit, and I've spent more and more time looking at the cyber security side. I'm now working with Bev and business risks, helping other companies deal with their cyber security needs. So can we go to the next slide, please? So today I'm going to talk about, cyber security protection strategies for a changing work environment. So I'm going to come at it a little bit different from the protection side. What things do we need to do, and what basic things we need to go on and do. So can I have the next slide, please? So the current pandemic has accelerated a change in work patterns for us all, for a large swathe of the working population. There's a general acceptance that, we had the Prime Minister on last night talking about getting back to normal. Well, for a lot of us, normal has changed for good. We're not going to go back to normal. Things have changed so much, and the technology has been proven that we can work in different ways. So what do we need to do to better protect ourselves from a cyber perspective? So next slide, please. So what is the new normal? Home working, for example. Over the pandemic, a large swathe of us have worked in a different way, working from home, homeschooling also. We're never going to go back to 5 days a week in the office, are we? Facebook, for example, have just quoted that they expect 50% of the workforce to perform their role remotely within the next 5 years. That's 80% of company leaders recently analysed. They also echoed that same sentiment, with 47% said full-time home working will continue. That's Gartner Group. Remote conferencing that we're all doing today has taken over and will continue. There's also changes that in the past, a good old IT director like myself would have been looking at our outside network perimeter and our physical perimeter to make sure the security of our people and our information was protected from those perimeters. Not the case anymore. There's a number of devices now being used outside the perimeter. That attack surface has changed. There's more and more information being used and exchanged outside office confines, which gives a real problem, not just in cyber and digital information, but physical information. There was a certain level of protection on paper that you could, within your office confines, almost look after. That's gone as well. And then there's a customer journey and supplier links are becoming more digital. There's less cash in circulation. In fact, cash is a thing of the past, and a lot of the high street banks are trying to get out of the cash society. You see banks, etc., closing down, and there's more online transaction and payment processing online. There's more and more remote working and the exchange of information remotely. There's more automation in processes, etc. So the new normal has arrived. I think what the pandemic has shown, that the technology works, and the advent of the digital age and digital economy has been accelerated throughout this pandemic. Next slide, please. So what are the cyber implications of this? So in the home working and remote conferencing, what you're finding is that there's more attack surface for cyber criminals or anyone want to get in there. And when I say a cyber criminal, it could be industrial espionage, it could be a whole load of different things. So we've got to look at it. Account takeovers, that's where people actually fish for information and come in as a marauder on someone else's account. That's increasing. There's over a 300% or 282% increase in account takeovers in the last year alone. Phishing attacks were actually going down, but they've actually increased over the last year because people are actually being susceptible to phishing attacks when they're outside the office area far more. Ransomware breaches still are occurring and increasingly occurring with small and medium-sized enterprises. We just go back to the WannaCry issue from 3 years ago. WannaCry happened, and it was because of patching, and it was not doing the basics. Network breaches continue. There's data leakage issues. So when I talk about data leakage, I'm talking about, do we know our data assets? Do we know how sensitive those data assets are? And are we protecting them appropriately? They have not been in the past. And there's a great deal of industrial espionage and other aspects of data leakage that are proven to be susceptible to different companies out there. Privacy concerns, GDPR is increasingly, there's more and more fines for GDPR. And as Bev says earlier on, a lot of companies that have had data breaches or privacy breaches, loss of reputation, loss of business equals loss of the company being in existence. That is becoming more and more prevalent. So cybercrime is growing faster than ever. And as Rebecca says, cybercrime is not looking at big organisations, they're looking at smaller organisations also, because they're easier to breach, because there's less process and procedure in place. Now, when we're changing the attack surface, because the dynamics of working practices have changed so much, we need to be aware and adapt our security and cyber processes to accommodate that. As I say, McKinsey, cybercrime growing faster than ever. It's quite obvious that. Next slide, please. So what can we do? So there's a number of protection strategies that we can take on board to protect ourselves. And I think we can break them into different areas. So we'll start with cyber strategy. Again, security controls. We need to review and revise them. And start with your cyber policies and standards and your risk appetite. Companies need to look at the basics when they're doing policies and standards. What are they trying to achieve? What's the risk appetite for the business processes they have? And avoid gaps. So at Business Risk Specialists, we spend a lot of time doing cyber assessments, understanding where businesses are. And what we find, especially in the small, medium enterprise businesses, is they do a lot of good cyber protection strategies. But what we find is they do them in a tactical way. Yeah, they put in a patching mechanism, or they put in endpoint security software. But what they do not do is look at the whole cyber framework, and therefore they miss a cyber strategy. And you could be very much protected on endpoints, but if you're not looking at your privileged accounts, or you don't know all your inventory of assets, you're going to be exposed because you don't know what you're surveying. A good example would be in a small manufacturing company where the company has an inventory of all its IT servers and where they are, but they're not dealing with industrial devices that are internet connected, which again would actually be a massive security issue, and we're seeing a prevalence for cyber hackers to attack industrial devices that are connected to the internet. So start with your policies and standards, work out your risk appetite, and avoid gaps by using a recognised framework, be it Cyber Essentials, be it the Centre for Internet Security Standards, be it NIST, etc. Use a recognised framework just to go through those standards. I think what we also have to do is recognise that our environment has changed, so we need to look at the overall security architecture. Our perimeter has changed. Gone are the good old days where you protected your perimeter at your firewall. Has that accelerated moving infrastructure to the cloud? I would say we'd have to look at that. Has it enforced other things like the use of VPNs for access for all internal staff to your network and to your key applications? We need to look at it. What I'm saying is, because we have changed things, we need to look at the changes and the impacts on our architecture. So please look at your security architecture. Again, goes without saying, performing regular audits against that framework is very important. You've got to remind yourself where you are and where you want to get to on a regular basis, and judge yourself and measure yourself against it. Moving on to doing the basics, and again, I'm re-echoing what both Bev and Rebecca have already said. Do the basics. What are the basics? Well, maintain an inventory of your assets. And when I say assets, I'm talking hardware, and I'm not just talking servers, I'm talking about all devices. What we've found is, small, medium enterprise companies lock down all their servers, they miss out their industrial devices, and what's more, they allow things like USBs to be wandering around without having an asset tag on them. One is, do you allow USBs, and you must track as an asset because it has got data on that is part of your company. Other parts, software. All software is an asset. You need to maintain where you are, and you also need to maintain and keep those software assets up to date. And finally, data. It's very surprising when we do our surveys, the amount of people that do not know all the data assets, do not classify the data assets, don't know how to deal with it. Data is where we're looking to protect. That's the gold. That's the new economy. It's not the hardware or software, it's the data for your company. So please protect it and know where it is and know where it's going. Vulnerability scanning, one of the basics. Patching, a basic. But again, if you go back to WannaCry, NHS lost over 100 million. It's purely because of bad patching rigours there. So we need to look at that. Other basics, privileged account reviews. Please, please, please look at your privileged accounts and look who's using them, who's going in as account takeovers, etc. Because what we find is a lot of companies are not looking at the privileged accounts, but that's the ones that need to protect more than everywhere else. Again, improve your monitoring. I've used SIEM tools to spot issues early and respond. It's important that you close down the time lag between a breach happening and a response, or a threat been highlighted and a response. That timeliness of resolution of exposure is essential, and tools are improving with AI technology and MDR technology from your traditional SOC SIEM tools. Need to keep up to date with the monitoring, and monitoring is quite cheap now because of the improvements we've made in the way it can, happen. So protection strategy number one, look at your cyber strategy, stand back, see what the changes are, see what you need to do differently. Look at your policies and standards, look at your architecture, audit that regularly, do the basics and improve your monitoring. Next slide, please. So coming to the people, again, we're re-echoing a lot of stuff here, but where do we start? Well, with people, improve staff cyber training awareness. It's now critical. Education, education, education. Our staff need to be comfortable with what they are handling on a day-to-day basis in this new work environment. I cannot emphasize enough the need to train people and keep them aware of what cyber means to them and what they need to do. Reinforce your acceptable use policies in your place of work about password controls, etc. Carry out anti-phishing testing on a regular basis. It's surprising when people who think they know it all are pulled up on an anti-phishing test. After that, it improves an awful lot. But not just improved education on cyber. Things like improved training on applications is important. Office 365 I've highlighted there, but there's a lot of things that you can do on Office 365 that would improve how you look after emails, how you personally improve the classification of data and send emails out, etc. So what emails are sent out, what emails are accepted, how you should deal with junk, how you should deal with, the way you set up your password protection. So for me, not just train on cyber, train on the applications that people use. Make them aware of the cyber tips and hints around these key applications as well. Coming back on to improved authentication, I would come away from just using passwords as a single means. I would do multi-factor authentication. It must be the way forward. Again, password password breaches are one of the single biggest issues that we have. Goes without saying, stats is, I think, 100, the most commonly used passwords are used by 20% of the workforce. So that's where cyber criminals will start at hacking. So again, reinforced by your policies and standards around passwords, tighten up in those areas and do regular checks, and continually tighten up on the way people are authenticated into your systems. Tighten controls on allowing software downloads for staff members and review software being used. Whitelist, only allow staff to use certain software products. Do not allow all software to be downloaded. When I went to one of the companies, when I first started, I had the marketing director coming on to me saying, all my staff need privileged permissions on all their laptops so they can download whatever software they want. Well, I'm sorry, I wasn't going to allow that. Whitelist it. There's so many downloads from staff of products that are not accredited or not been through the normal ways of working. You need to tighten up on that. The way I would do it is whitelist on products and only allow privileged accounts to download software. That might be a bit draconian, and there may be some businesses where you've got to allow certain privileged accounts to do that, other things. If that's the case, you've got to monitor those as privileged accounts and monitor them very closely. Blacklist some websites. Do not allow your staff to go out and download from various sites where cyber intrusion malware could come in. Sites like gambling, porn are obvious sites where we should disallow people from accessing those sites. Again, it comes back to training and making your staff aware of what's there. Printing, do you allow people to print from their home location? I think you need to look at, do we need to do printing going forward? As I say, there's still, in some of the companies I dealt with, some of the major data breaches were because we were losing information on things like trains or USBs being left on trains. Please look at things like printing and USBs. They are also part of your cyber strategy. Do you allow that outside your perimeter? And there is an argument to say, do we need printing at all? One other one, sample home audits. We should be looking after our staff. We need to look at the environment and equipment needs for our staff. We need to look at home working and make sure that it does give the job satisfaction improvements and the productivity improvements without putting people at risk and allowing people to get the mental health benefits of some of these changes in working environments. So sample home audits may be a way forward. Can I have the next slide, please? So again, coming on to protection strategies, the customer journey. When it's all around, we need to assure our customers of the privacy of their data. As Rebecca says, there's a lot of fraudulent activity, especially in small, medium enterprise businesses that certainly Bev and myself are coming across when we're doing these audits, where there are small businesses being exposed to payment fraud, and also, exposed of crucial customer information being lost. So it's very important we assure our customers that we will protect their data as much as they protect the data. So cyber accreditation is becoming more important to customers. We assure them that the processes and procedures of companies they're dealing with and the information is being dealt with appropriately. Things like cyber essentials have already been mentioned. I would also highlight that software companies need to make sure there's software accreditation practices as well. And that is becoming more and more prevalent, where open source code needs to be accredited, not just proprietary code that's been paid for. We need to revisit controls and authentications for customers. As we said, payment fraud is becoming more, so we need to verify to our customers the information that we're using, and we need to improve the controls around that customer data. It's all important. Once we lose our reputation with our customer, we've lost our customer. And provide tools for customers to improve security. So maybe in business to consumer businesses, we offer tools like free antivirus or free practices to keep our customers up to date with their security. So I think there's a number of ways we can both improve and reassure the customers that we're looking after their information, but also maybe give them some tools to help improve their security also. Next slide, please. So again, final area that I would like to just highlight to you is rethink the supply chain. Our supply chain, it's almost a mirror image of the customer, but we need to reassure that our supply chain is not our weakest link. That's why accreditation is becoming more and more important. Yeah, already we've heard from Rebecca that a lot of companies will not work in the government sector if they're not, Cyber Essentials Plus. Yeah, I can see that happening across a lot of business streams. And it's not just about Cyber Essentials, it'll be software accreditation and other areas as well. We need to get closer to our supplier processes and ensure there are no control gaps. I will not mention the business, but in the last 10 years we had an issue, and it was a supplier processes that let down and allowed an intrusion to one of the businesses I was working with caused a breach, and guess what? The supplier then went out of business, certainly with our business anyway. So again, get closer to our supplier processes. If they're not good enough, we shouldn't be working with them. We need to rethink that supply chain. By all means, help our suppliers get to the level we need to get to, but we need to rethink that supply chain. So again, that framework helps, because that framework should not just look at your internal security policies and procedures. It should be looking at your supply chain, and regular audit of the supply chain will most certainly help that. And again, I think another thing that we should be doing is more cross-industry collaboration. What we're finding as business risk specialists, we do desktop assessments in different areas. What we found very important is do desktop assessments in industry sectors, so that we can show industries, various industry sectors, what the benchmark is becoming and where the best benchmark should be. And there's a great deal of best practices can be shared between different businesses, which really help with cyber improvements. Next slide, please. So again, in summary, the pandemic has accelerated the changes in the work patterns of society. This has given greater focus on being cyber secure, with cyber attacks on businesses growing. But there's a lot of hope on what we've got to do. We've just got to do it properly. And with regard to protection strategies, for the new normal, we need to look at our overall cyber strategy and adapt that cyber strategy to accommodate the change in the work patterns to this new normal, the change to become more digital. Look at our policies and strategies, look at our architectures, look at doing the basics, look at how we monitor. An internal workforce, educate, make sure that we support our internal workforce in the new way of working. That customer journey, protect information, GDPR is coming up all the time, the privacy of customer information, and also make sure that we're not the weakest link for our customer. Feeding that into the supply chain, make sure the supply chain's not our weakest link. And in summary, I think it's exciting that, normal has changed. I think we are now really accelerating in a digital age, and the pandemic has, brought this around a little bit quicker. And if we do the things right, we should actually benefit and be more productive. However, we just got to make sure we put the right cyber strategies in place. Thank you.
That's great. Thanks very much, Mick. Bang on time. Okay, so I'd like to hand over now to Dr. Emma Philpott from IASME, who's going to talk about Cyber Essentials and Kickstart scheme. Thanks, Emma.
Hi. Thanks very much, Bev. Right, first slide, please. And the next one. So I'm CEO of IASME. This is a little bit about IASME. So we are the sole provider of Cyber Essentials since the 1st of April. So that was quite a big change for us. We're just a little tiny company, and we've had to scale up to deliver the whole scheme. So that's been very exciting for us. We also own and run the IASME governance standard, which is a little bit like ISO 27000. But designed to be achievable and affordable for small companies. So when you do that, that actually contains a Cyber Essentials assessment. And when you do the basic level, it's only £100 extra, but it includes all the extra stuff like backup and having a risk assessment and business continuity plan, training your staff, having locks on the doors, all the things which is the next step after the basic technical controls, which is Cyber Essentials. So we issue at the moment more than 2,000 certificates a month, and that's still going up. We had a massive drop in the first lockdown. We've had some drop in this latest lockdown, but the scheme is still growing quite fast. Next slide, please. So we also, just to let you know, I'm not going to talk about these now, we've launched 2 other schemes just now. We have a counter fraud certification scheme and an Internet of Things security certification scheme. So the counter fraud one is in association with open banking. And the Internet of Things security certification scheme, we've been grant funded by DCMS, which is a different part of government, and it is getting ready for the legislation that is coming in, which will affect all consumer Internet of Things products from whenever the legislation comes in, which will be in the next couple of years. So you can see more about those on our website if you're interested. Next slide, please. So Cyber Essentials, it's been mentioned a lot. I'm sure there are some people that don't know what it is yet. So it was developed by the government in collaboration with industry. And this was about, 6 years ago. So we were helping to develop it right at the beginning. And we were really the voice for small companies. So everybody else that was developing it was from a large organization or government, which of course is a very large organization. And we were the ones in the room saying, well, what about somebody working from Starbucks on a tablet? And, oh my gosh, the others couldn't cope with that. So it's not perfect. Certainly Cyber Essentials is not perfect, but we have seen a lot of small and micro companies certify, which is our main objective, really, to have something that doesn't form a barrier for the smallest of companies. So it consists of 5 technical controls, and I think those are on my next slide. So yeah, these are the 5 technical controls. Unfortunately, their names are quite technical, so they look a bit complicated, but actually they are pretty simple when you boil them down. It's really just housekeeping and hygiene. So it includes things like having non-guessable passwords, making sure you have up-to-date antivirus on all your endpoints, making sure that your software is in support. That means that it still gets updates when vulnerabilities are found, and making sure the critical updates are implemented within 14 days. So all of it should be able to be done for no extra money if you can do it yourself. Most of it can be done by a non-technical person. Sometimes the firewall parts, you do need some advice from a technical person, but not always. We've had non-technical people go through the questions, implement each control as they get to it, and pass Cyber Essentials. So that's the idea. Of course, if you're using unsupported software, so this includes things like Windows 7, you won't be able to pass Cyber Essentials, and it will cost you money to put in the supported software. So that's the area that the cost really usually comes in. And that's the same with endpoints like mobile phones. Your mobile phones need to be supported, and often that means that they have to be quite new, which is always a problem. Next slide, please. So people say, oh yeah, get Cyber Essentials. And, why does it work? What evidence is there? So although this is quite an old study, it was a really good study. It was Lancaster University did a research project into small companies that had got the controls in place and those that hadn't. And they looked at the common internet threats. So this is not if someone is trying to hack you. If someone good is really trying to hack you, they probably will. But this is the organized crime way of just sending, zillions of malicious links. And those kind of attacks that are not targeted, but very, very common. So as you can see here, by having the Cyber Essentials controls in place, about 70% of those attacks were stopped, full stop. About 30%, it says partly mitigated. So the reason for that is, if the patch had been in place, if it had been available, then that attack would have stopped. But because the patch was not yet available, so this is a vulnerability is known about in a piece of software. So someone has found a mistake in Word, for example, Microsoft Word, and it means that malicious attackers can get in. You have to, before you can put the patch on, Microsoft has to create that patch and roll it out. So in between the time when people know about that vulnerability and the patch is available to update your software, that's what the partly mitigated instances are there. There's nothing you can do that's why it's really, really important to put software updates in place as soon as possible, because that stops those attacks. Next slide, please. So Cyber Essentials is 2 stages. So the controls are exactly the same. Cyber Essentials are those 5 controls, and they are explained in the requirements document that you can download from NCSC's site. That document is actually being reviewed at the moment to try and make the controls more specific. At the moment, they're a little bit vague and open to interpretation, and we, with NCSC, know what they mean, but if you just read the requirements document, it's not always obvious. So we're reviewing that with NCSC at the moment, and that will be published, I hope, in April. So the controls are exactly the same, but the assurance levels are different. So there's a basic level, which is just £300 if you don't have any help. It's a verified self-assessment. So you complete the answers, and then a trained cybersecurity assessor will go through and mark them. And any area that you're not compliant in, they will give you feedback. And if you fail, you'll see all the feedback and have a chance to resubmit within a few days without any extra cost. But there's only one resubmission. But you do get to see all the feedback. There's the Cyber Essentials Plus level, which is more expensive because you need quite a lot of time of somebody who can do virtual vulnerability scanning and technical audits. So that expert actually goes into your systems and does a technical audit. So obviously the assurance is greater. You can always find something when you do that test. There's going to be an old PC in the cupboard that everyone had forgotten about, for example. So the assurance is better, but it is more expensive. Next slide, please. So this is showing the size of company that certifies. So this is from 2019 to 2020. And you can see that almost 3/4 are micro and small company. That is our real aim. We don't want another scheme that is too expensive or too demanding to allow micro companies to certify, especially as you often need to have this certification to bid for government contracts. And we know that micro and small companies are where the innovation happens. You know, we must definitely allow them to be part of the supply chain and feed into government. And so we need to obviously make sure that they have the technical controls in place, but we don't want this to be a barrier. And I think this graph shows that it isn't. So almost 3/4 are micro and small. Interestingly, the large companies often find it most difficult to certify to Cyber Essentials, and that's because of their vast numbers of endpoints. How to make sure they are all patched and make sure they're all in date is actually quite difficult. So larger companies are finding a difficulty, and we have a project at the moment with NCSC just started to look at what we can do about that. Next slide, please. So any small companies, and by small I mean has less than 20 million turnover a year, that certifies your whole organization, not just part of it, and is based in the UK or Crown dependencies, automatically can get cyber insurance underwritten by AXA. So you still have to, you get the choice to opt in or opt out. You don't have to have it. It's included without any additional cost. So you don't get any money back if you don't have it. And it is £25,000 limit liability, which doesn't sound very much, but it's not usually cash. What it is access to 24-hour incident response. So as long as you meet those criteria, if you have a breach in the following year, you get a 24-hour phone number that goes through to technical and legal incident response. And you know, these things always happen on a Friday night when everyone's gone home, no one's answering your call. You have someone that can immediately help you stop whatever is going on and advise you on the legal aspects. You know, do you immediately need to, you know, within 72 hours, do you need to report it to ICO or something like that? So we include this because we believe that it is really, really important. Particularly small companies have someone to turn to. So next slide, please. So of course, the main reason for failure is out-of-date operating systems or applications, because you can't pass if you have that. And often You know, if you've got lots and lots of out-of-date software, it costs a lot of money to update it, but it's there for a reason. That's how most breaches access your computer, by taking advantage of the known vulnerabilities in software that's out of support. Next slide, please. So where to start? So you can download all the self-assessment questions from our website just free of charge. So you can have it in Excel, or which is often easier to work with, or a PDF, which is easier to read. So you do that, and then you think, I don't understand this. Next slide, please. So we have a new, it's kind of a guidance tool, and you can follow that link. So we're doing a soft launch in next week, actually. So this is before that even soft launch. And what we've tried to do is include guidance for people who don't really know where to start. So it takes you through a set of questions, and then it gives you an action list at the end. And it's linked to guidance for non-technical people. And the way we've written that was, we got a technical person to write it, we got a non-technical person to rewrite it, and then a technical person to check it. And so it actually took us a lot more effort to write than most of the other guidance. But we've had really good feedback about from people who say that they've actually found it understandable and they found it easy to use. So please do have a look and do give us feedback, because, you know, we're still in the phase where we're trying to update it and make it better. Next slide, please. There's also a LinkedIn group, again, free of charge. You can't just join anymore. So you'll join and I'll get a little notification. I'll just have to let you in, but I let everybody in. So yeah, you can just post your questions. We'll try and get back to you. There's lots of very knowledgeable people on there that can help get back to you with answers as well. And you can see everyone else's questions. So obviously don't put anything sensitive on there, but we find that lots of people find that very helpful. Next. And then, of course, most importantly, we have more than 260 certification bodies around the country. So this is an amazing network. They are all cybersecurity companies. We have trained them, we audit them. I mean, poor things, you just need to ask them. We're always on their case. We continuously train them. We continuously update them on the latest information from NCSE and our understanding of Cyber Essentials. And we are so proud of them. They're from all different organizations, they're all different sizes, and they are really an amazing expert network. So please do contact them if you need more advice. And you can see them all on our website. Next one, please. So that was all I was going to say about Cyber Essentials. It can prevent 80% of the common cyber attacks. They're not difficult to put in. It just takes a little bit of time, which I know is always hard to find. We've had people put these changes in and pass Cyber Essentials in just an hour or two, you know, when they have a bid that has to be in. They're not difficult. It just takes a little bit of time and a few setting changes, unless you're using lots of unsupported software, and then you really do need to have a plan to roll out supported software. But I also was going to very quickly talk about the Kickstart scheme we're running. Next slide. So this is a government-funded project which goes on until the end of this year, calendar year, and they pay for somebody to work for the minimum wage for 25 hours a week for 6 months for anybody. So what happens is they're aged between 16 and 24, and it's your local job centre will identify somebody that meets your criteria, because you get to specify what the job spec is, meets your criteria, and is within that age group and is at risk of long-term unemployment. And they will refer them to you. You interview them and pick the one that you want. And of course, the government pays all the costs of employing that person. They even give you £1,000 up front to, you know, buy their computer or whatever you have to do. It's only for 6 months. And of course, if it doesn't work out or you don't have the money, you don't have to employ them past that. But what they have had is 6 months of paid work and lots of training. So if you get these people through us, we train them up in cybersecurity over that 6 months for you. And that doesn't cost you anything additional. Next slide, please. So, so you can be employing them in any role at all. You know, we've had inquiries from hairdressers and landscape gardeners, but equally marketing executives, you know, admin people. We will give them all cybersecurity training because we think that it's important that everybody has it. So far, we've had approval for 59 placements across 23 companies, and we're still waiting to hear for 11 placements across 7. So the placements have to be done by June, by the end of June, because it's only 6-month scheme, and it only goes up to the end of December. We've had quite a lot of delays from DWP to start with because I think they were completely overwhelmed and it was a very manual process. But they seem to be getting on with it now, and we're getting the first few applicants through. So that's really, really great. If anyone is interested in taking part in this, you can just apply on our website and we will submit your request in the next grant application. We tend to submit them about every 2 weeks. So, you know, 59 people on universal credit already are going to get these job placements. So I think that's really, really good news. Last slide, I think. Yep, that's it. So back to Bev, and thank you very much for listening, and I'll be able to answer any questions at the end.
That's great. Thanks very much, Emma. I think Siobhan's posted the LinkedIn group link in the chat as well. And yeah, we're very much looking forward to our Kickstart placements, which should be anytime soon. So thanks for that, Emma. Okay, so changing a little bit direction now. We're gonna talk about how we improve our in-house skills in cybersecurity. So I'm going to hand over to Tom Pickford from the Growth Company.
Thanks very much, Bev. First slide, please. So thank you very much for the opportunity to come and talk to you today about how to navigate the wealth of support that is available for businesses and organisations, and how this support can actually be used to access cybersecurity and data protection skills. So my name is Tom Pickford. I'm the Partnership and Integration Manager at the Business Growth Hub. So I work specifically on the Skills for Growth SME support programme that is available for businesses that have a trading address in Greater Manchester. So I joined the Growth Hub in November last year, and prior to joining, I had no idea of the wealth of support that is available to sustain and grow your organisations. And what I hope to do from speaking to you today is for you to be able to find the right people to speak to about what support is available for your business and organisation. So there is different types of support available through the different growth hubs, and if your business is like many others in going through challenging times, there is help available for you, not just from government grants or loans. And if your business is going through growth or has particular barriers to growth, help is available for you. And hopefully this presentation will go through how to find that. Next slide, please. So Growth Hubs started in 2014 when the government decided that they needed a nationalised, localised approach to address the issues and barriers to growth being seen in different areas of England. So Growth Hubs bring together the best of public and private sectors partners to promote, coordinate and deliver business support needs based on local needs and working in partnership with government departments. The Local Enterprise Partnership Network is there to support and drive local economies. LET board members are made up of local business leaders who volunteer their time. So LET boards across England have over 330 senior business leaders who sit alongside 180 elected local authority leaders working in partnership to deliver locally led growth. And to date, the Local Enterprise Partnership have created over 180,000 jobs, supported over 100,000 homes being built, leveraged over 15 billion of investment into the private sector, from the private sector, and equipped 3 million people with the skills required by employers and businesses. So skills sit at the heart of every local enterprise partnership, and the LEPs work with employers and learning providers to identify the skill needs of the local population and business community. And then this knowledge is used as part of local industrial strategies and forms part of future commissioning of skills funding. So how to find your local enterprise partnership? There's a LEP that covers all areas of England, and all you need to do is just select the right growth hub or enterprise partnership that is available. Sorry, just let that chat, so I'll try and bring it a bit closer so I can so you're able to hear me a bit clearer. So all you need to do to select the right growth hub or enterprise partnership is just go on to the contacts page of the LEP network website, which I'll share after this presentation. Next slide, please. So to give you an idea of the fully funded skills development programs that you can access across the north of England, so in places like Yorkshire, North Yorkshire, as well as the Humber growth hubs, you can access programs like Skill Support for the Workforce, which offers full training needs analysis, so you can understand where your gaps are to meet your organisational ambitions, and funding to meet those needs. So the key sectors within those particular areas include creative and digital, chemical, visitor economy, engineering and manufacturing, and food manufacturing. Within the Northeast, you have programs such as the Durham Digital Workforce, offering a range of fully funded training programs. In Cumbria, you can access funded training programs through the Chamber Business Solutions and Centre Leadership Performance. In Lancashire, as part of Boost Lancashire, they have a program called Upskilling Lancashire. Very creative name for the program, but it does exactly what it says on the tin. It assists business to identify, design and develop and implement workforce education training programs linked to the strategic needs of the business. In Liverpool, you've got skills brokerage and digital skills for the workforce to link your organisations with the right providers that can meet your skill demands. In Cheshire and Warrington, you've got things like Accelerate and the Digital Skills Partnership. Accelerate is a £30 million programme partly funded through the European Social Fund and in partnership with the University of Chester. So if you live or work in Cheshire and Warrington area, you can apply for 40% of funding for training courses. In Tees Valley, Leeds Enterprise Partnership, and Greater Manchester, where I operate, you have the Skills for Growth SME Support Programme, which is a fully funded consultancy service designed to diagnose where you currently are as a business, what your growth ambitions are, or if you have any barriers to growth, or if your business or organisation is currently going through any challenging situations, what skills do you need in place within your organisation? The programme then works with the individuals within your organisation to do training needs analysis on each of them. So you as an organisation know holistically what talent you have in your organisation, where your gaps are, and who can be upskilled in different areas to meet your business ambitions. The Skills for Growth programme also bring in specialist support to your organisation as and when it's required. So these things like health and wellbeing specialists, business change specialists, and apprenticeship specialists who can help you guide the employers and employees through the standards that are available. So specialist support can, as and when, be brought in as required through the partner network, through different growth hubs. So if an organisation requires a specific cyber or data support, this can be brokered as part of the programme with a partner as part of the growth hub. With the skill needs that come on the back of the individual training needs analysis, we then broker a relationship with providers where we can source funded, co-funded and commercial options for skills that you require within your organisation. Next slide, please. So when joining onto one of the programs that I've just discussed, the programs will uncover areas of your business that individuals will be required to be upskilled to meet either your business challenges or ambitions. And this may be around cyber or data protection skills that are required. So the growth hubs and enterprise partnerships will have close ties to local authorities. So you'll be able to find out what initiatives and grants are available for cyber and data type courses, along with support you can receive through the hubs. So such in Greater Manchester, you can have access to the devolved £92 million adult education budget and providers that can offer cyber and digital data, or through the likes of the Fast Track Digital Workforce Fund, where you can access cyber programs funded. Each of these different skills development programs that I've mentioned on the previous slide will be working closely with providers that can service the need of employers' skill demands. So we're able to broker relationships with providers that can offer funded learning for cyber and digital courses, such as Bev's company, CyberPro. And if you're bringing on new talent into your organisation, take advantage of the apprenticeship grants and initiatives through local authorities, but also nationally, which can be used on programmes such as, the cybersecurity technologist or the cyber risk analyst, where, if you're taking on new apprentices, you can, if it's a 16 to 24-year-old, you'll receive a £2,000 grant. If it's 25 and over, employers will receive £1,500. So next slide, please. So this brings me on to the last slide before I share some links with you around the levy matching and the levy network, which I've mentioned in previous slides. So the logo on your screen, you can see there is the levy matchmaking service in Manchester. However, this service is available either through your local enterprise partnership or direct with local authorities. So this service started in 2017 alongside the apprenticeship levy, with businesses having a wage bill of over £3 million having to pay 0.5% to be utilised through apprenticeship programmes. So large employers can donate and sponsor small employers' levy programmes. So either whether an employer doesn't pay into the levy and doesn't pay the 0.5%, they only have to pay 95% of a particular apprenticeship programme. With the levy matching service, that covers that full amount of the programme, so that the employer wouldn't have to pay anything. It will be fully funded through the sponsoring organisation. So if an organisation has utilised all of their levy, they can also access this levy matchmaking service if there's more apprenticeship programmes that they would like to bring into their organisation. And this could be used through the levy matchmaking service, and they can apply to be sponsored by a levy donor. So the service was initially set up to cover STEM type apprenticeship programs. However, since the start of the pandemic last year, the levy matchmaking service has opened up to cover all standards. So it will include things like cyber and data. So if you're currently paying into levy or want to use more apprenticeship programs, or don't pay into the levy and want to get the programs fully funded, and you can still access the grants initiatives if you're looking to take on new hires, then absolutely look at getting into the levy matchmaking service, either through the links that I put on the screen in the next slide, or through your local enterprise partnership or local authority, who will be able to tell you how to access the levy matchmaking service to get fully funded apprenticeship training. Next slide, please. So yeah, I just want to thank you again for the opportunity to come and speak about where to find business support and how to use these programs to access funded training for cyber and data protection. If you haven't already, I would encourage you to reach out to your local growth hub or enterprise partnership to understand what support is available to your business. They'll be able to help you understand what grant initiatives and links to, the likes of what Rebecca was talking about with the Cyber Resilience Centre. And if you would like further information on the Skills for Growth SME Support Programme, or have any other queries, please do not hesitate to reach out to myself on the email address shown on the screen, which will be sent out following this meeting. Thanks, Beth. I was a little bit quick there.
That's great. Thanks very much, Tom.
Yeah.
And the Skills for Growth scheme is fantastic. I mean, we're both a customer and a provider of it, so we've just going through our diagnostics phase at the moment. We're one of the consultants there, so yeah, so it's fantastic free service to businesses. So thanks very much. So that leads on nicely then to my next presentation. So I'm the founder and CEO of the CyberPro Academy, which is part of the Specialist Hub. Specialist Hub is a number of specialist academies, digital and cyber. Next slide, please. Thank you. And the next one. So, leading on from what Tom said, and he was talking about the levy match service. So we actually use this levy match service quite a lot for our clients. So we're a main provider of apprenticeships. We focus a lot on cybersecurity apprenticeships, and we work primarily with SMEs. So, you know, we've used this levy match making service. So 70% of our apprenticeships have actually been 100% funded by this scheme. Actually, it's been Lloyds Bank who have been our sponsors for that. So that's fantastic, and it's really changed and benefited our businesses that we're working with. Sorry, just let me minimise this a moment. 85% of our apprentices are from SMEs. And 40% of them are women, which is fantastic. So, you know, those numbers are growing. You know, that obviously that's been an issue over the years, but we are addressing that now. And more women are coming into the cyber security industry, which is fantastic. It's not all technical. So I'll run through some of the programs in a moment. But, you know, a lot of people think, oh, cyber, I need to be really technical. There are programs which are based really around risk management. You need to have some level of understanding of IT, but they are more non-technical roles. And we find a lot of companies taking advantage of that. Surprisingly as well, average age range of our apprentices is actually 30 to 50 years old. I think the view is that, you know, apprenticeships are just for people that are leaving college, just starting on their careers, but actually we work with a lot of career changers. Then I'll talk about a few of those case studies in a moment. Next slide, please. Thank you. Okay, so just at a high level, these are the technical cyber apprenticeships that we deliver at Cyber Pro Academy. So we've got a level 3 cybersecurity technician, really kind of first line support, monitoring for those threats in businesses, and making sure they're applying cybersecurity procedures and controls for their organisation and those cybersecurity mechanisms. And then the next level on from that is a cybersecurity technologist. So this is really looking at that security design and that architecture, going back to what Mick was talking about earlier, within an organisation, doing things such as security testing and investigations and response as well. And then we have the level 4 cyber intrusion analyst. So, you know, this role really is to detect breaches in the network security and then escalate to the relevant function or person. And that might be an internal or an external escalation. And that's using a range of tools to monitor those networks in real time, such as Mick talked about the SIEM tools earlier. So it's about understanding those alerts and making sure we take the appropriate response. Next slide, please. Okay, so the non-technical cyber apprenticeship. So this is a cybersecurity risk analyst. Again, it's a level 4. And the purpose of this role is to really understand the threats to an organisation and what the risk is to that organisation. So conducting cyber risk assessments with all the key stakeholders and functions across the business, developing policies and procedures and making sure that people are aware of those and that's communicated, preparing incident response plans and business continuity plans, and really helping to improve that internal cybersecurity culture. Next slide, please. So just a bit of an overview of the programmes. So they're all 14 months of training, and of course they're all virtual at the moment, and that's actually working really well. So we will continue to do that as long as that fits with the guidance from the Department for Education and ESFA. So the way that we run those is that we have masterclasses every other week with our apprentices. They also get a dedicated skills coach who's also a specialist in cybersecurity. And that skills coaching happens in between those masterclasses to make sure that the apprentice has understood what has been taught in the masterclasses and actually can apply it within the workplace. They'll also do some online learning, so we give them access to a number of different portals, the main one being Pluralsight. We'll provide them with some directed learning, but there are also on there about 7,000 courses which they have access to. So that all actually is part of off-the-job training, but there are other things that they can do which forms part of that off-the-job training, like shadowing people, doing project work, etc. They'll get access to labs and we'll have to complete some knowledge module assessments after each knowledge module has been taught. So after the training period, there's the endpoint assessment. Now, throughout that 14 months, we'll be actually looking on building the portfolio of work that's being carried out. But there'll also be a project at the end, an interview with a BCS assessor and an employer reference as well. Certifications that the apprentice achieves through doing this programme. So minimum of 3, depending which programme it is, minimum of 3 to 7 BCS certifications, which are related to the knowledge modules. And we also offer a CompTIA certification as well, whether that is Network Plus or Security Plus, whatever is more relevant. Okay, so we are a BCS accredited organisation and also a CompTIA authorised partner as well. Next slide, please. So these are just a few case studies of some of the businesses that we've supported over the last few months. These ones are fairly recent. So we've helped a data transformation consultancy with really big growth plans who required a risk analyst to support one of their clients with a managed service around data security, but also to support with their internal cyber risk management as well. So we offer a free recruitment service for apprenticeships to our clients. So we recruited an apprentice for the client who actually already had 15 years experience of working in financial services. And this person was looking for a career change into cybersecurity. So, that was perfect for both parties. So that was a new hire and a career change. And now they're benefiting from that and able to service that client. Another one, data protection consultancy. One of the senior consultants, they wanted to upskill in cybersecurity, so they were very focused on GDPR, Data Protection Act, wanted to enhance that service they were providing to their clients, give a more holistic view and a more holistic service. So we actually used the Levy Match service that Tom referred to. So we managed to obtain 100% funding for the training for the consultants to enrol on our cyber risk analyst apprenticeship programme. And now this is enabling the business to provide additional services to its clients. So that was an upskill example. Next slide, please. Another one, an IT managed service provider, obviously very focused on IT support, but wanting to expand into this managed security services. So one of the consultants there, we managed to get 100% funding again through the Levy Match service for that training and enrolled them on the cybersecurity technologist programme. So that's already benefiting them. They're already communicating now around cyber and cyber awareness and some of the cybersecurity services that they can now offer their current clients and also new clients. So again, that was an upskill. And one last one, a telecommunications provider, one of the network engineers looking to upskill in cybersecurity to better protect his own business, but also they're also branching out into cybersecurity as a service. So that's enabling them to do that. And again, we've managed to get 100% funding for the training through the Levy Match service for them to enrol on that cybersecurity technologist apprenticeship programme. And again, that's helping them already and benefiting them and getting new clients. Okay, I keep going to press page down to move my screen. Thank you. Okay, so I mean, these are some of the services that we offer as a business. So like Tom mentioned before, so we also provide a free capability assessment to look at your internal capability, but you can also do that through the growth company and through their Skills for Growth scheme. We offer a free recruitment service for anybody that's putting the new hire through our apprenticeship programme. We actually have at the moment 348 individuals really keen to get into a cybersecurity role who are waiting for an opportunity. Unfortunately, we don't have enough vacancies for them. There's a lot of demand. So it'd be great if we could support some of those people in getting into those cybersecurity careers with our support and our employers' support. We support with funding. It can be a little bit complex sometimes, but we take the complexity out of it. There are lots of schemes. Tom's covered some of them. But we will deal with all of that. We'll just find out, a little bit about your business, whether you're a levy payer or not, and your particular circumstances, and then we can advise you and support you through those application processes to get that 100% funding where possible. Where we can't get the 100% funding, if you're not a levy payer, the government pays 95% of the training costs anyway. So your investment is 5%. Okay. Of course, we do the cybersecurity apprenticeship training, we do the mentoring and skills coaching. And we can alter these programs for your business, given the numbers. So we can run things like a boot camp style, where we would do some more upfront training initially, rather than the alternate masterclasses. So that's always an option. And we can add additional certifications into the program, whatever suits your organisation and the individual's requirements. Page, please. If you want any further information on this, you can go to our website, cyberpro.co.uk, or contact myself at bev@cyberpro.co.uk, and we can give you any information you need. Again, we'll be sending these slides out at the end. I think, just to reiterate, if you've got any questions at all as we're going through, we've got one more, we're going to have a break shortly. And then we've got one more presentation, but if you do have any questions, please put them in the chat and we will cover them off at the Q&A session at the end. So thank you. And I think we're a little bit ahead of schedule, not too much, five minutes, I think. Oh no, actually we are quite ahead of schedule, aren't we, Helena? Do you want to break early? Or do we have Paul on and want to bring Paul on for his presentation now?
You've got me here, Beverly, so I'm easy either way.
Fantastic. Helena, is that okay? Can we move on to Paul?
Sorry, I was on mute. I think Paul's got a video that I'm going to bring up, so maybe it would be a good opportunity for everyone to just take 5 minutes, and then I can sort the video out in that break.
Okay.
And then we can return back, yeah.
Yeah, perfect with me, Helena.
All right. I'll see you all in 5 minutes.
Okay, thanks, Bev.
Thank you. Hi, Paul. Are we back and ready to go?
Hi, Bev. I'm back. Not too sure if I'm ready, but we can give it a go.
Helena, are you good to go with the video when needed?
Yeah, I'm ready whenever.
Fantastic. Okay, Paul, thank you. Hand over to you.
Okay, thanks very much, Beverly. I think I've got about 20 minutes, so I should be done in about 22 minutes. If I go over, Bev, if you can just let me know. So just go on to the first slide, the title slide. So what we're trying to do here is to try and focus on a real life incident response to a cyber attack. Before I dive into this, thank you very much for the opportunity to Bev for inviting me over to your region of the IoD. Recently, I've become the cyber ambassador for the East Midlands Institute of Directors. So that's been a very, very recent appointment. So I'm the CEO of Crypto Cloud. We've been going for about the last 4 to 5 years. We've grown organically. We've got about 30 members of staff, and we're a 24/7 security operations center. So we do the operationally focused type cyber activities. Most of you may have already reached out to me on LinkedIn. If not, I am there on LinkedIn. So before we get going into the discussion about the experiences from a Crypto Cloud perspective of a cyber attack and how we work with organizations and how we go in there and handle an incident, just to give you a break from the voices, I thought it might be a good idea just to put one of our high-level cyber videos on. So hopefully this works okay on Zoom. I think Helena's got the video. So happy for you to press play, Helena. This is where tech goes hideously wrong.
Can we see that? Okay, now is the screen come up?
Yeah, screens come up.
Right.
Cunning now prey on the defenseless, unfortified cybersecurity, unprotected networks, and vulnerable businesses. Let me show you how. Say you're getting some work done out of the office whilst enjoying a blueberry muffin and a caramel latte. Delicious. Nature calls. Perfect. Not even the most basic protection, and he was nice enough to leave his laptop open. Let's see what we can find. Interesting. A tender document for a major project with a local university. Could be valuable information for a competitor looking to undercut. Don't mind if I do. Jake here thinks he's been unfairly dismissed. Poor dear. He's packing up his things, but he won't go down without a fight. There goes some important client invoices, personal information, and company IP. That'll leave a mark. Do you know what I enjoy most? Phishing. It's so simple and so easy. Just sending a blanket email to every inbox on a company's network. See what I can catch. Louise can't resist a generous 50% off sale. To claim the offer, just go ahead, pop your details in, including that all-important password. Shoot. Conveniently, Louise is a financial administrator. Now that Louise is on a phishing attack, I have access to all the company's client accounts, employee records, and personal information. A perfect catch. The beloved cleaner Melanie. With a little convincing, I'm sure she'd be happy to swipe a couple of portable hard drives containing who knows what kind of valuable information. All for a little bonus on the side. And if that doesn't work, there's always other ways of convincing her. Melanie, you naughty girl. Her husband will be devastated. Some people have a sixth sense, but not Sarah. No. She's trying to do her best by finding out who this USB belongs to. It won't be long before she plugs it into a machine and gives my malware unrestricted access to their whole network. To those of you who own any type of business, large or small, and with something worth protecting, you may be wondering why. Why do any of this? Who knows? But know this. You could be next. I do love a good horror.
So thanks, Eleanor. Can I pick up again? Can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Fine.
Okay, that was a very, very blocky my end, so I'm not too sure what everybody else saw on that, but it had a really poor frame rate coming through Zoom. So apologies if anybody saw the same as what I saw. Yeah, but I think you kind of got the idea, and they're basically the main threats that most organizations face. So it touched on, for instance, the third-party risks, the cleaner. It touched upon people using unauthorized devices like the USB. It touched upon the social engineering aspects as well, and also people in public places not taking the necessary due care of attention of their devices. So the opening scene, for instance, in the coffee shop is something that we've seen time and time again. And also we've all been on a train when the guy next to you jumps up and he goes to the toilet, his laptop's wide open, and you look over there and it's got things like the Cabinet Office logo and things like that. Like we've all seen those kinds of situations, but it happens all the time. If we can just nip to the next slide, please, Bev, Helen. Okay, so we touched upon ransomware during this morning's briefings. I'm not going to dwell a lot on ransomware. The reason why we've got the ransomware slide on there is, as an organization that provides 24/7 incident response to organizations of all sizes, we see that 9 out of 10 incidents that we handle are from that ransomware side of the house. Ransomware as a service is gaining popularity. So if I can just take a second to explain what that is. Basically, ransomware as a service is a organized activity where you will get a well-known organization would be out there doing the reconnaissance, looking for organizations that they can hack and breach. And then once they've managed to get some kind of foothold into your organization, they will then farm it out to their trusted partners out onto the dark web, who can then pick up the pieces from the ransomware attack and then exploit it further. And this is an organized activity that's really, really picked up momentum. I'm going to talk a little bit about one of the recent incident responses that we did just before Christmas for a large further education college, and that's Lincoln College. And the agreement that I have with the head of group services there, Graham Harrison, and their CEO, Gary Headland. They're quite happy for me to talk about it amongst the IoD and also to a wider audience as well. So they got hit by a ransomware as a service attack in late November. So ransomware is absolutely horrible. It affects your system. It will then attempt to encrypt your data. They demand a payment, and normally organizations have a short window to actually get in there to find out what it is, how to contain it, what the extent of the attack is. They will always be a demand for payment, but also I think it got touched upon earlier on. The organization is also very severely impacted because they're worried about not only the financial impact, but also the reputational impact as well. So today's chat will be concentrating mainly on that ransomware as a service. Do you want to go to the next slide? Okay, so here's some stats. So Norsk Hydro was attacked a couple of years ago, and it cost them 45 million. And again, with the reputation, they had a huge dent in their profits, and their takings fell by 82%. When you're looking at protection against a cyber attack, people have a false sense of security around cyber insurance. Now, it's funny that I say that, you know, because we're partnered with the Lloyd's of London cyber insurer with optimum specialty risks. And we are very, very close to OSR, who provide specialist cyber insurance. But we continually disagree about how much support cyber insurance gives an organization. If you've got to rely on cyber insurance as a protective mechanism, then you're failing to prepare, okay? Cyber insurance should be seen, really, what it is, as a last form of defense. And cyber insurance should be there to assist when an organization suffers a breach, and they want that financial support for that whole incident response, from that containment to that investigation, to getting that forensic investigation leading to that business as usual, getting that organization back up onto the feet. So we deal with all kinds of cyber insurers. There's some good cyber insurers. Most cyber insurers have the right intentions. Some are more proactive than others. Okay, but organizations who purchase cyber insurance should be looking at basically saying, can I cover my costs from a business perspective if I get breached? Now, that could be things like business interruption, which is harder to try to claim back, but certainly for that incident response aspects, okay, that's what your cyber insurance should cover. So please look carefully at your cyber insurance costs. No two cyber insurance policies are the same. So there's some high level statements there on the slide for those people who think that if they've got cyber insurance, then the woes will go away. Next slide, please. So what kind of questions should business owners be asking? So it's whether or not you have low confidence or high confidence within these areas of whether, when you get hit by a cyber attack, how well your organization could and would recover from an attack. So most organizations, small organizations, don't have any kind of IT security budget. The larger organizations do. And we've seen some larger organizations put up to 5% plus of their actual turnover towards the security budget. Other large organizations that we've dealt with spend less than 0.1% of the entire turnover. it's so CEOs from small organizations to large organizations, they have to plan for when it happens. Like somebody said earlier on, I think one of my slides has it on. It's not if it happens, it's when it happens, because most organizations will be breached. You may already be breached and you may not know it. The attack on Lincoln College that we got called in to lead on the incident response following their discovery, which was about 1 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday, that we did the investigation. We found that access to their infrastructure had been ongoing for about 5 months. So there is that perception there that you should be looking at trying to do all you can to plan for when the occasion comes when you have to do something about it. So the go-to kind of control would be around your backups. So can have a chat about that a little bit later on. I think it's been mentioned earlier on today, is don't focus on trying to boil the ocean here. Look at what's critical to your organization. On another briefing earlier on, I think Mick mentioned you must know your critical data, and that's your crown jewel data. You really, really should understand what data is critical for your organization, and if you lost it today, how would it affect you as a business? And make sure you protect that crown jewel data. So like the other bits of data, like presentations, personnel files, yeah, they're critical, but make sure you identify those elements of that data. Make sure that you've got good backup. Don't just rely on cloud backups, because they tend to be more near time, more tactical. Look at your medium-term backups, and also look at offline backups as well, and make sure that when you back up your data, you're also testing how to restore data, because when you get hit by a cyber attack, one of the hardest questions to answer is, when's your last known good backup? For example, when was the last time you backed up your data that we can be confident that the cyber attacker, the ransomware as a service group, didn't have access to? Because there's nothing worse than getting a backup, restoring it, and then you've restored the attacker's attack route. Okay, so it might have some kind of command and control, could have some kind of trigger, a file that's contained in your data, and all you're doing is like restoring the attacker back onto your system. So make sure your backups are 100% clean. Make sure that you know what you're backing up, and also in order to do that, then you need the full path profile analysis. Who's got access to your data? Where did your data go? All of that other stuff, yeah. But the backups cannot be really underestimated. Cyber insurance, I mentioned cyber insurance. Make sure you've got cyber insurance, but please don't rely on cyber insurance to get you out the stock when you get hit by a cyber attacker. Make sure you get good independent critique of your IT security. That's always a good idea. So I think Emma's already spoken about the Cyber Essentials. The Cyber Essentials Plus is a good start point. Okay, but then there are other audits and other avenues that you can make sure that you're covering all of the issues and risks within your organization. Don't concentrate just on the cyber side with that resilience, with that risk. Look at the business. So look at the business risk and the business resilience, and approach it really as a business problem rather than an IT problem. Right up at the top, make sure that your board actually ties into this. Make sure that they receive those regular cyber briefings. Have a risk register, have a cyber risk register. We bought one in, and we're only a small organization. Most organizations will have a risk register, and in there should be an element of cyber risk in there as well. Meaningful audit and certification, I already mentioned that before. IASME do a great scheme with Cyber Essentials and also Cyber Essentials Plus, where we're very, very close, and we've been trying to get it now for about the last 5 months to be an awarding body with IASME. So we've supported since day one. So we're working very, very close with Emma and the team. We have our own cyber operational business risk audit, which I think Emma's aware of as well. So that's on our website. What I would encourage everybody to do is to have a proven cyber security partner. So within the Northwest, you've got some great organizations. So you've got Beverly's organization, for instance, and having that relationship with a trusted cyber security partner, somebody that you can pick up the phone to 24/7 for advice, for guidance, to help you through a particular problem, cannot be underestimated. So Beverly's doing a great job up in the Northwest with Manchester. We have our main client base tends to be East Midlands, London, and also globally as well. So one of the programs that we're involved with at the moment, and we've been doing it now for about 3.5 years, is the data loss prevention program, running that for Novartis, who are a global pharma company, and they've got 150,000 endpoints, or 140,000 people. And so we've done this from the very initial, doing that business enablement issue, all the way through to the rollout of the capability across all of their infrastructure. And look at how do we protect ourselves? How do we detect it? Do we need any monitoring? So an advanced threat protection capability was something that Lincoln College put in place after we got them back to business as usual. They're saying to us, look, we've had the audits a few months ago and we still got breached. We do all of this and we still got breached. What should we have in place? And so we were lucky enough that they came to us because we were in situ, and they said, can we have a look at your advanced threat protection at Crypto Cloud? And so we sat with them and we showed them how it works, how easy it was from their perspective, and they took up that full service. That's becoming more and more popular because of the nature of the threat. The traditional security operations center relying on the traditional model of analyzing log files is failing. Okay, in my opinion, that's had its time. It's more dynamic, actionable intelligence for the businesses, because you want to run your business. You don't want to be too involved in 24/7 alerts, checking your network secure. So again, by working with a proven cyber security partner, to have that blend of capabilities will protect your business when you get breached. It's as simple as that. Move on to the next slide. So here's my little rant about cyber insurance. I haven't got a down run with cyber insurance. It probably seems like that at the moment. It's just to open up people's eyes. There's a lot of focus on cyber insurance will pay the ransom fee. Again, I'm not a big believer of paying organized crime. You get no service level agreement from a cyber criminal or as a cyber gang who have hit you with a ransomware attack or any kind of cyber attack. In fact, if you pay a cyber group or cyber criminal and you pay in Bitcoin, watch out, within 18 months they'll be back again, they'll be hitting you again, and you'll probably be ending up paying again. What you should be doing is making sure you've got the protection, the prevention, the controls in place, making sure that your data's looked after, make sure that you can recover from a catastrophe, and make sure that you can move forward without having paying the ransom. Now, there's going to be instances where you have to pay the ransom, but that's normally when there's a cost of life implication involved. And we've seen this with like certain clinics and hospitals who have been hit, and for them to lose the data and not to have that data because they've had no other controls in place, they've had no backups, and if they don't get that data back, then people were going to die. So there's that protection of life argument, and that's where we see the majority of the the ransom's being paid. So please, organizations, if you can put all your controls in place, you won't have to pay that ransom when you pop up in Bitcoin. And it's normally low cost for one machine, but then they multiply it over hundreds of machines or thousands of machines, and then it can get really, really expensive. And you will get hit again and again and again. They will not leave you alone at all. Next slide. So recovering quickly from an incident response. So this was taken from Lincoln College, and it was part of the wrap-up exercise that we did with them. So organizations should have some eye expertise in their IT staff. Lincoln College were very, very lucky that they had a very, very good and capable head of IT, very hands-on. So he was able to do everything that we suggested he do to contain it in the initial stages of the attack. The senior leadership as well has to be tied into that cyber, to that recovery process. So Gary Headland's the CEO of Lincoln College, and he was an absolute breath of fresh air to deal with, and he understood the risks, and he supported the team in the incident response activity that started on that Sunday. Again, this is all linked to the controls and the capabilities. Lincoln College had some really, really good technology in place. They were lucky that they had really, really good backups. They had Commvault, so they took snapshots of all their virtual servers. They had good strategic backups as well, with the Dell capability they had in place. They had strong infrastructure protection. They had Fortinet firewalls, which were very, very high level firewalls. They have a dedicated firewall manager. Okay, he was employed full time to manage their firewalls. They had a disaster recovery plan in place on how they would recover from absolute zero. They're good cyber insurance. I think they went with a company called Travelers. And so when Crypto Cloud got called in, the first call we tend to make is to their cyber insurance client. And so with Travelers, they have their own dedicated cyber incident response team, and the client is given the choice whether or not to continue to utilize Crypto Cloud, or else whether or not that client wanted the cyber insurance specialist incident response team to go in there and take over. 100 times out of 100, at the moment, the clients have turned around and said, no, we prefer to use Crypto Cloud. And then we then become the incident responder really for the insurance body. But that's down to the individual insurance. So whether or not that would be Hiscox or Travelers or CFC, okay, depends who your cybersecurity insurance people are. Okay, but make sure that you've got a comprehensive cyber insurance policy. Make sure that you have a cybersecurity partner. Now, we didn't have a formalized relationship with Lincoln College. We'd done some security testing for them about 3 or 4 months before. They knew a little bit about our advanced threat protection, which we briefed them back in January, February time, but they thought that they were fully protected. They were a full Windows house. They had the Windows Defender. They thought that they were all squared away on the cybersecurity front until I got the call at 2 o'clock on a Sunday morning. Make sure that you test your recovery systems. Make sure everything's centralized. So with Lincoln College, it affected 1,600 endpoints and about, how many servers? About 80 servers, 80 VM servers. And so we had to re-image basically 1,600 endpoints. The nature of the attack, it was spread. It was on virtually every single server was hit, and it spread via an exec command through the infrastructure. So we had to recover nearly all of the endpoints, the devices, and the servers. They were hit via a remote desktop exploit. So it wasn't by anybody bringing the USB key in, it wasn't by anybody clicking on a link on the phishing. It came in because of their remote desktop services wasn't properly locked down. And they already had the same infiltration about 5 months before, and they were just joining up the dots, and the environment was, the match was triggered on a particular point of time when something was done by the IT team. Okay, so without saying too much more, it was a very sophisticated attack, but attack that could have probably been avoided if they had the correct controls in place. And we offer an instant response as a service. What I'm going to tell you about that. What you do need, though, is that relationship with a trusted and credible external cyber partner. And I'm not going to steal Bev's thunder here. Okay, you've got one there, CyberPro. Okay, they know what they're doing, and to have that experience in a time of crisis, I cannot underestimate. Next slide. I know my time's running out, so I'm very, very nearly finished. This is more for the deck when it gets passed out to everybody. It's that key questions to ask yourself. Are you happy with the telephone support, or else do you want on-site support? Again, I can only talk from my experience. So I've done 23 years in military intelligence. I started my first company, sold my first company. I then worked for Ernst & Young as the cybercrime director in central London. I set up their cybercrime initiative down in London for Ernst & Young. That got passed over to New York to be run out of their New York office. I've been over to Qatar. I've worked for the Crown Prince in Qatar doing their cyber intelligence initiatives over there. So I can only talk from my experience of doing instant response. And if you're not on the ground, I find it very, very difficult of how you can do that telephone support with an instant response. And I'm talking from having done in the region of about 130 incident response activities. Trusted partner, do you have one? I keep banging on about that, but it's true. Incident response plan, make sure you've got one. When you get hit, you're going to want to know when you got hit, who it was, how did they get in, what did they take data-wise? Did you suffer any data exfiltration? And also try and answer why. Okay, why were you attractive to that group that managed to breach your organization? Make sure your backups are in place, tactical, operational, strategic. Make sure your disaster recovery, your business continuity, make sure that once you get hit, you can recover to business as usual. And ultimately, at the end of it, improve. Like Lincoln College, they improved because they looked at all the services. They had a new audit done. We put them an advanced threat protection 24/7 monitoring solution in place, and they can sleep a lot more tightly now at night because they know that they're being properly looked after. Every cyber attack that we've been on has been different. So, for instance, I led on the MHRA ransomware attack in 2017. And so we were the ones that went in and actually recovered them from a brink of disaster. Nobody knew MHRA was, the Medical Healthcare Regulatory Agency, were 3-4 years ago. Now everybody knows who MHRA are because they're the ones that have been authorizing and approving the vaccines for COVID-19. Okay, so imagine if MHRA got hit 3 months ago when they were halfway through approving the vaccine. Just think about that, okay? And 3.5 years ago, we were the ones that went in there and recovered them from a very, very serious ransomware attack. We did a South African bank a couple of years ago. Lincoln County Council got hit 2019-20. We advised, but we never got called in for that because they had a contract with Serco. And I think they're still suffering some kind of impact from that attack from a couple of years ago. We did a large defense company a year ago. We do regular incident responses for legal companies. We did a charity a few months ago, Lincoln College, who we've concentrated most of today's talk with. We've done electrical companies as well. But that list is on there because it doesn't matter what sector you're in, cyber attackers don't really care. They have a scattergun approach, and they don't care whether or not you're a large organization, small organization. In fact, they find probably that the smaller the organization, the more likely they are to pay because they don't know any better. Go on to the next slide. And that's my final slide, is on ATP. I'm not going to go over that, but that's just some information in the background on the ATP. I'm going to stop there because I think I've gone over my time excessively. If anybody's got any questions, I'm happy to hand over back to Bev and Helena.
That's great. Thanks very much, Paul. So great insights there to an incident response. Thank you for that.
Cheers.
Okay, and we are well within time, actually. I think, yes, we are. So let's, we've taken some questions throughout the presentations, so we'll just run through those now. Okay, so we've got a question. Has the shift to working from home greatly increased the risk of cyber attacks on businesses? Rebecca? Do you want to answer that one? Do we have Rebecca?
Yeah, we have. We've seen a massive increase in attacks. I think it's people's IP addresses aren't secure. The companies that used to take cash as payment have now gone to PCI and payment online. That's insecure. The mandate fraud has massively gone up, and I think, you know, not working on secure VPNs from home. And not having networked computers. So lots and lots of things contributed to the fact that it's all gone up hugely. I think fraud has gone up 400% during lockdown.
Thanks, Rebecca. Another question here from David. Why use VPN software if you've got good antivirus software? Mick? Oh, you're on mute, Mick.
Can you hear me now?
I hear you now.
Hi. Yeah, it's an interesting one about VPNs. What I would say is antivirus is better for protecting you from online threats. Yeah, it's there to do things like prevent your devices being infected by malware, adware, viruses. It's there to remove viruses from your devices, and it's there to identify phishing emails and things like that. So it's very much an important part of your defense. However, VPNs are different because they protect you from the outside world, i.e. the outside world can't see where you're going or accessing. So I think you're better seeing it as complementary. You need both. You need antivirus and you need VPNs. VPNs are a useful tool to make sure that people don't know where you're going and protects your communication with whatever you're doing. So I think VPNs are an essential point of how you look at your security architecture going forward, but so is antivirus. You need both. They complement one another. They don't act one against the other. You need both. Hopefully that helps, Bev. Just coming back onto the point beforehand as well, I think it is important that you look at homework and see that as a threat area. Make sure you get those good practices and policies in place and educate your staff. Hopefully that helps.
Thanks, Mick. Anything else on that from anybody else?
Okay, so I'll also chip in on that one. When we encourage the use of VPN, it's for people who may be working from home that have to get onto their work systems. They should be doing that via VPN rather than utilizing remote desktop services using the RDP protocol, which is very, very insecure. A VPN is an encrypted, trusted tunnel, and it allows that home user to access, say, their work environment, their work infrastructure in a much more secure manner. Antivirus, as Mick said, is there really is the first line of incident compromise for any kind of virus, but it's also signature based. So if you're going to get any kind of cyber attack and they get onto your system, the first thing that they would probably do is like make sure they're trusted. They could either turn off the antivirus, they may not trigger the signatures that triggers an antivirus. So an antivirus is there, like we all think that we should have it, but don't see it as the overall protection mechanism that's going to keep you safe because you've got antivirus. Lincoln College had antivirus, they had a good antivirus. I've known organizations with Sophos, with ESET, with all types of their protection on the antivirus, and they still got breached. Okay, so it's part of that cyber toolbox, but you shouldn't be relying on it to be the savior of everything you do from a computing perspective.
Yeah, I totally agree. So Bev, the key thing is you need both. Don't say you feel as if you're protected by one or t'other. You need both.
Yeah.
Okay, great, thank you. I think we've got a question around bring your own device. It's not a specific question, but I think maybe one for Emma to just describe what you're expecting in terms of controls for bring your own device or using own devices at home.
So this is really difficult. Bring your own device is a really difficult subject for companies to manage. Obviously, it would be best if you didn't let people bring their own devices, but it becomes very expensive to provide phones and laptops for everyone. And so bring your own devices are bound to be used by companies, but you have to still have control over your data. And so for Cyber Essentials, you need to ensure, ideally, that people's work information is in a separate part of their device to their personal information. You can do that. There's all sorts of mobile device management tools that you can use. Ideally, you use that. And then you'll be able to wipe if it gets lost or stolen, you can remotely wipe the business information without wiping the personal data, their personal information, which is illegal. It's their information. Also, with many mobile device managements, you can limit what they can access with their business information, but you don't have visibility over what they're accessing personally, and that's quite important for privacy. But also, however you manage the endpoint devices, even though it's owned by that individual, you still need to make sure that they meet the requirements. So that endpoint still needs to be supported. You can't have an iPhone 5 it being a bring your own device if you're going to get Cyber Essentials, because it still needs to be supported, because the vulnerabilities in an iPhone 5 are not now being patched, can be used to access your business data, because that is your business data on that person's phone. That person's phone, even though it's theirs, still accesses your business infrastructure. And so it's a really, really difficult point. And, we often get people saying, we can't possibly ask people what mobile phones they're using. It's their personal mobile phone. We can't ask them. If they've got business information on it, including email, you have to ask them, or say they can't use it, because that's a really easy way for attackers to get your business information.
Great.
So what else?
Anybody have anything to add there?
Hi, Bev. It's Mick here. Yeah, I echo Emma's points. I think BYOD is an absolute minefield, how you deal with it, purely because you've not got control on the device. So therefore, you need to look at your policies and standards and your architecture to see how you defend against it. For me, you cannot control a person's personal device. So therefore, you've got to control at a different level the architecture. Yeah, and not allow too much access points there. So for me, if people are bringing their own device, you don't allow them to get into you. For example, your email architecture has got to be sandboxed away from it, so that people can't get totally download information to their devices from it. It's got to be sandboxed within an environment. If that makes sense.
Thanks, Mick. Anyone else?
Okay, we've done BYOD for for Novartis. So they've got 140,000 users, and their BYOD policy. So the main difference between having your own device is they classify it as an unmanaged device, as opposed to one of their laptops that they give their employees, which is a managed device. So they separate it really into the two camps, unmanaged and managed. They don't really care whether or not it's an iPhone 5 or an iPhone 11. It's a device, it's unmanaged. They would insist on that mobile device management, that MDM, and as part of that enrollment of that device into the organization's infrastructure, you have to sign your life away on that device. Emma, you were really, really too kind when you said that they don't have to touch your private information. What they would do is if they had any kind of compromise, okay, they would flatten that device. Okay, so they trigger the response, and it would reach out to your device, and it would completely wipe your device. So you either, so certain organizations would either have that as a policy, or they may have a softer policy because of the requirement around EU GDPR and the data privacy laws, etc., etc. Depending where you are in the world, they have a different approach to it. So with Novartis being a Swiss company, they allow, for instance, people to do their personal banking on their managed devices. So on their laptop they get from Novartis, where they should be doing Novartis work, you can also do, because it's part of their Works Council arrangements and agreements, it's part of law, that you can do your personal banking. Okay, so from a managed device to an unmanaged device, they treat it very, very separately. To come down to a small to medium enterprise problem and what kind of controls to put in place, those MDM type of capabilities are great. There's also endpoint monitoring capabilities. So we've got one which is based on Office 365 controls, and it allows also for the browsing, the safe browsing on certain sites. It's a little bit like antivirus. It allows users to go and look at various websites as opposed to other websites. But there are controls in place that you can put on that user's device if you're willing to let them tie into your organization's email, because most people need that flexibility now as we're all working in a modern environment. Okay, so people see it now as something that they have to have rather than if they're allowed to have. Okay, that's all I would add to that.
Thank you, Paul. Okay, so we've got a couple of questions which are talking about insider threats. So, you know, how do we counter that? I mean, I'll kick this off and then open it up for anybody else who wants to add. So, I mean, initially when we're taking on staff in the organisation, we need to make sure that we're doing adequate background checks, depending on what type of business we're in and what type of data we've got access to. You know, financial checks and fraud checks and things like that, references. And then the controls whilst, you know, they're in the organisation, role-based access controls and least privilege. So just making sure that we're only giving people the absolute minimum access that they need to be able to do their job, and having processes in place so that we can quickly delete or change people's access as and when they either move to a different department or they leave the business, making sure that that's acted on timely. We want to make sure that we've got audit logging on and that those are actually being monitored as well. There are many tools we can use that do like behavioural analytics, so monitoring people's behaviour over time, and then if anything suspicious happens, so somebody might be downloading a load of data at 3 o'clock in the morning, that alerts, that's something that's suspicious and needs to be investigated by the relevant team members. Incident processes as well, making sure every member of staff has had the training and awareness and understands that and knows who they need to go to if they are suspicious of a member of staff. Whistleblowing policies as well. If they don't want to go direct to a manager or another member of staff, they can use that. And yeah, just that constant communication, I think, and engagement, keeping people engaged and understanding what they need to be looking out for. Has anybody else got anything to add on that point?
I'd only say that you know, using things like seam tools, etc., are useful ways for the organisation to checkpoint on some of the behaviours going on in the organisation. It's always useful. I'm not talking about the alerts, etc. I'm talking about the insights that it gives you at such a platform, because you can see what people are doing, the way they're accessing, when they're accessing, and looking at a bit behavioural analytics as well, because you can then use that to recommend ways to improve the way you do things, and also how you monitor people.
Thank you, Mick. Anybody else? No? Okay. So last question, I think, is how do you become ISO certified? If we're talking about from an organisation, then it's a two-stage audit. So, I mean, we need to put in the information management system, security management system. First step would be really to understand what your security objectives are, what you're trying to achieve, and then carry out a gap analysis. And we do this with some of our clients. Carry out a gap analysis to kind of baseline where you are, and a risk assessment, look at your gaps. And then you can prioritise what you need to do to fill those gaps. So, you know, there'll need to be 2 stages. We'll need to interview all of your key stakeholders, gather all the relevant documentation, and then when you're ready, when the ISMS has been operating for a period of time, you'll then have an audit. Review that documentation first of all, and then there'll be a second part of the audit where we actually check that you're doing what you're saying you're doing in your documentation. Okay, it can take a few months, 3-4 months. It depends on the size of the organisation. It depends what needs to be done. If it's a relatively small and non-complex organisation that hasn't got too many issues to fix, you know, it might take a few months to get through it. If we're talking about ISO certification from an individual perspective, because we can have ISO auditors and implementers, so we run training courses on that. It's a 5-day course with an exam, and that teaches you all you need to know there to become an implementer or an auditor. Okay, so I think, Siobhan, do we have any other questions, or is that everything? Have we covered everything?
Just all the ones I'd sent you through there on the email, Bev, that should be everything.
Okay, all right, fantastic. Okay, well, hopefully you've taken away some valuable insights and strategies that you can go away and implement in your business today. And just like to say a big thank you to all of our speakers today as well. Fantastic. So thanks very much and enjoy the rest of your day.